The International Court of Justice said that they will hear the genocide case, but stopped short of calling for a ceasefire in Gaza. China has asked the Houthis to tone things down just a little bit in the Red Sea, and U.S. forces were attacked 4 more times across Iraq and Syria. So let's get into it. I'm recording this at 8:30 a.m. Central on Friday, January 26th, 2024. So the major news overnight really just happened a couple hours ago here. The International Court of Justice put out their first major announcement since the charge of genocide was brought forward by South Africa against Israel. Now, in this case, the court did not rule on that core case of genocide, but instead said that Israel must ensure its forces do not commit genocide and take measures to improve the humanitarian situation for Palestinians in Gaza. A couple key notes here, kind of the major takeaways from the court's announcements. They said the court does have the jurisdiction to hear this case, which was actually big news. There was the possibility that this could have been thrown out, and they said this doesn't, for a variety of reasons, does not meet the criteria of something that the ICJ should hear. They disagreed there and said this is something we should hear. Additionally, the court said that Israel must take measures to prevent acts of genocide in the Gaza Strip, and they must report back to the court in 1 month, talking about what they're doing to prevent that. They said Israel must prevent and punish incitement to genocide in Gaza, and that Israel must allow humanitarian aid to continue to flow into the Gaza Strip. And then they said Israel must take more measures to protect Palestinian civilians, but does not order it to end military operations in Gaza. That was one of the major things I think a lot of people were waiting for, was whether or not the court would request, really is what they have the power to do, a ceasefire in Gaza. That didn't come out of this. And I've already seen a lot of takes from both sides claiming that this is a big win for their cause. So just be ready for that. I think, there's a lot more coming in this case. It's far from over. And I think depending on which media you consume today, you might hear that this is actually really, really big news and is headed towards more confirmation that Israel is committing a genocide in Gaza, or you might hear it the other way, that this absolves Israel of a lot of the accusations and that they have a clear path forward to kind of beat this charge. I did hear some people say that there was a request by the court for Hamas to release the hostages. I didn't see that. I was listening to this. It was in the background this morning as I was getting the kid ready for school, so definitely could have missed it. But even reading through some summaries after the fact, I didn't see Hamas mentioned at all. And didn't hear anything about a request or demand from the court that Hamas release those hostages. So maybe if you kind of read between the lines in some of that stuff, you'll get to that point. But again, just something I think you'll probably come across depending on which media you're consuming. But for now, the major takeaways from my perspective, the court will hear this case. They say Israel has to do more to prevent any genocide from happening. But no ceasefire being demanded as of now by the International Court of Justice. Then turning to operations on the ground, there's some indications that we're going to start seeing some more controversial news from what Israel is doing inside of Gaza. The reason for that, and some of this has started to trickle out a little bit, but the reason for that is the IDF put out a long statement yesterday, very detailed, talking about everything they're doing to prevent disruptions to medical providers in Gaza. I'm going to read through some of their statement here, kind of giving an indication of what might be leading headlines here in the next couple days. They said IDF intelligence indicates that Hamas is operating from inside and around the Nasser Hospital and Al-Amal Hospital in Khan Yunis. The systematic use of hospitals across Gaza by Hamas has been repeatedly documented and distributed. The IDF has been liaising with the hospital directors and medical staff on the phone and on the ground to ensure that the hospitals can remain operation and accessible. The IDF communicated that there is no obligation to evacuate the hospitals. On the contrary, we have reiterated the importance of safeguarding and protecting these hospitals so they can continue providing medical services to the people of Gaza. They continue by saying Gazans who wish to move from the Nasser and Al-Amal hospitals, as many have chosen to do, can pass through the corridor on the Al-Bahar Street, located on the western side of the hospitals. The IDF has been communicating this information in Arabic via media channels, distributing flyers in Arabic in the area, as well as through Arabic-speaking IDF soldiers who are deployed on the ground in Gaza. Prior to the commencement of our operations, again, this is the Israeli statement, prior to the commencement of our operations in the area, we took proactive measures to ensure that the hospitals had sufficient fuel and supplies to maintain functionality throughout the duration of our operation against Hamas. And in closing here, they say the facts on the ground disprove the blatant misinformation that has been disseminated over the last 72 hours, falsely claiming that the hospitals are under siege or attack. In this regard, it is worth reiterating the strict prohibition under international law against using medical facilities as shields for military operations. So again, I started to see some of this trickle out in the last few days, saying that hospitals were being targeted and there was intense fighting going on right outside some of these facilities. The fact that Israel, a couple notable things here, that Israel is trying to get ahead of this in a way. They saw how this played out up north, especially around Shifa Hospital, where narratives just kind of flew. In the absence of official statements, narratives flew about what was happening or not happening. So this is Israel trying to get ahead of that a little bit. But we'll see. Any military operation by any military in the world around a medical facility in the time of war is incredibly complex and very, very dangerous. So, again, I think this is something to keep an eye on. We'll probably see some headlines in the coming days talking about, again, continued military operations in and around some of these medical facilities. Then turning to Hamas, they put out a statement yesterday saying that over the course of the past week, they were able to completely or partially destroy 68 Israeli military vehicles and killed 53 Israeli soldiers across 57 different military operations. Hamas says that they blew up 4 houses, again, those house-borne IEDs that are rigged with explosives. So when Israeli forces move into them to clear them or to set up some sort of outpost, they're detonated, collapsing in on the forces inside. Hamas said they also detonated 2 entrances to tunnels as well as a minefield. And they say their Mujahideen shot down 2 Skylark reconnaissance planes, drones, seized 8 drones, including 2 suicide planes. The suicide planes got to be some type of loitering munition that I guess didn't detonate is probably the way I would interpret that. But either way, pretty significant roll-up here from Hamas, claiming 57 different attacks of sorts against Israeli forces all across Gaza over the course of the past week. We have seen a pretty significant uptick in kinetic activity. If you're reading through some of the Israeli statements, a lot of their forces are saying this is some of the most intense fighting they've seen since they've been in Gaza so far. No sign that that's going to stop anytime soon. Then turning down to the Houthis, according to U.S. Central Command, Houthi militants fired 1 anti-ship ballistic missile from Yemen towards the USS Carney in the Gulf of Aden. That was earlier today on January 26th. Central Command says that missile was successfully shot down. There were no injuries or damage reported. So if we really step back, I would say the attacks have slowed a little bit, haven't stopped, slowed a little bit, nowhere near the point where commercial ships are going to feel safe and comfortable moving through that area right now. And then news came out yesterday that Chinese officials have asked their Iranian counterparts to help rein in attacks on the Red Sea by the Iranian-backed Houthis or risk harming business relations with Beijing. That was according to 4 Iranian sources quoted through an article in Reuters. China's Ministry of Foreign Affairs said, quote, China is a sincere friend of the countries of the Middle East and is committed to promoting regional security and stability and seeking common development and prosperity. So a whole lot of nothing there. Some nice diplomatic speak, right? Can't really take anything from that statement. The Houthi spokesperson came out yesterday and said that they haven't heard anything from Iran or China about stopping any sort of attacks. They say that their allies, the Iranian allies, are in lockstep with their mission and their beliefs as to what they're doing against U.S. and allied shipping in the region. By saying, quote, they will not inform us of such a request, especially since Iran's stated position is to support Yemen. It condemned the American-British strikes on Yemen and considered Yemen's position honorable and responsible. So there were some rumors a couple days ago that the U.S. had asked China to do something here, and it's not as though China has really close ties with the Houthis or even Iran necessarily. If anything, Russia would probably be closer to that category, but China's a powerhouse in a lot of ways all around the world, so it's possible the U.S. is just trying to get somebody else, an economic global powerhouse, to do something to help scale back these attacks. At the time of that report, it sounded like the Chinese hadn't really done anything at all. Maybe they had. But of course, after this report, the next piece of news that comes out is that attack on a U.S. ship. So, of course, far from stopping as of today. There was also news yesterday that the U.S. warned Iran about the terrorist attack that occurred in Kerman on January 23rd. According to U.S. government officials, they say they provided Iran with a private warning that there is a terrorist threat within Iranian borders. This was following a longstanding duty to warn policy that has been implemented across administrations to warn governments, friendly or adversarial, against potential lethal threats. The official said that we provide these warnings in part because we do not want to see innocent lives lost in terror attacks. Of course, this attack did take place in Iran. It went forward. The case that the U.S. is making here is that they warned Iran prior to that happening and gave them indications of the group, potentially the date that this attack would occur, yet it still happened. Iran denied that this happened at all. They said not the attack, but that the U.S. warned Iran of it. And it's worth noting that shortly after this attack, even after Islamic State claimed responsibility, Iran came out and said this was Israel. All signs point to Israel. Now, the Iranian official here clarified, said if there was a security message exchanged by the United States, it was with the aim of protecting Washington from Iran's thumbs, especially after Israel's war in Gaza. So the notes that are coming out of Iran related to this story is no, they didn't warn us at all. And any communication that came through was trying to get us to de-escalate and not engage United States forces in the United States over their policies in Gaza. So either way, it's one of those, we get a couple of these every day where the two sides just say something completely different and you kind of get to take it from there. Then U.S. troops were attacked 4 more times across Iraq and Syria yesterday. That brings the total number of attacks to 153 since October, carried out by Iranian-backed groups against U.S. forces in Iraq and Syria. So these attacks were claimed by the Islamic Resistance in Iraq, which is a loose grouping of Iranian-backed militias in the Iraq and Syria region. They fall under this, the self-proclaimed axis of resistance. And these are groups that the United States has recently carried out attacks against, right? Preemptive strikes against some of these groups, lining up rockets, missiles, or drones to attack U.S. forces. And then just a couple days ago, striking headquarters, logistics facilities, and weapons storage locations belonging to, in this case, specifically Kataib Hezbollah. Now, the Islamic Resistance in Iraq did put out a statement earlier today with a lot of hype saying, everybody get ready. We're about to drop something big. And it wasn't. They did say a few days ago that they're going to expand operations across the region, no longer just targeting American military forces, but American interests at large. In this statement earlier today, they said, quote, "We have not seen anything from the criminal American enemy, and according to what we have experienced throughout the years of fighting, anything but treachery and tyranny. And this attempt is nothing more than to shuffle the cards, turn the tables on the resistance, and buy time to carry out more crimes and diabolical plans to harm our people and our nation." This comes amidst some U.S. conversations with our Iraqi counterparts about the future of military cooperation there. In some lights, that's being framed as a U.S. withdrawal from Iraq, or there are people in the Iraqi government asking the United States to leave, so I don't want to downplay that. On the other hand, it's being framed as what does the future look like in cooperation between the U.S. and Iraqi forces going forward. This statement kind of comes amidst that ongoing conversation. Then there was some news that came out yesterday about a new U.S.-Israeli arms deal that I thought was worth clarifying here. So it sounds like a deal is moving forward for Israel to procure from the United States a squadron of 25 F-35 stealth fighters, a squadron of 25 F-15s, and a squadron of 12 Apache helicopters. There's no timeline set for this at all. It just sounds, and it's taken years in the past, right? Israel might ask for these to be expedited, but this just sounds like what I've seen, a step in that direction of the overall approval. Hasn't even been approved yet, to my understanding. Now, the reason I wanted to bring this up is twofold. First, you don't need F-35s and F-15s to fight Hamas. That's against a Hezbollah threat, maybe an Iranian threat more broadly, but that is increasing Israel's military capability to take on a conventional adversary like Hezbollah, like Iran. That's notable. The second part here is there's so much conversation right now in United States domestic politics around aid to Ukraine, aid to Israel, border security, all of that, and it's gotten really even more messy over the last couple days. I think some folks took this news as understanding that Congress and the U.S. government somehow split out the Israeli military assistance. This is not that. This is a separate arms deal, a long-term arms deal, so that the munitions, the extra rockets, missiles, artillery rounds, things like that, tank rounds that are being requested by Israel or that the United States is providing to Israel as part of this military supplement package, if you will, that is that is separate. That is still, to my understanding, all mixed up in that mess that is trying to come to some agreement about Ukraine funding, Israel funding, and border security. But that's all I've got for now. Of course, if interested in this or other national security subjects, be sure to check out the Substack that I've linked in the description below. We've started to bring on some experts, some great folks that are doing deep dives into some of these subjects that I think provide a lot of complementary data to what I'm talking about in these videos, and it's free. So if interested, check it out. Link in the description below. But thanks for watching. I'll see y'all next time.